years, 2013 and 2014. She has joined NIT Trichy in June 2018, having previously worked as an assistant professor at Tyagaraja School of Management as an employee insights analyst at Air Loyal. She was a visiting professor at the University of Passau, Germany. Her teaching interests are in the domains of human resource management, organizational behavior, performance management, and international human resource management. Her research interests include employment relationship, psychological contract, organizational identification, employee turnover intention, HR analytics, and HR practices. Welcome, ma'am. So I would request you, ma'am, to continue with the session, ma'am.
Thank you, Subhashri, for your warm introduction. Good morning to all the participants who have joined over the session. So now, today's session, what we are going to discuss, as you all know, as per the schedule, it is all about strategic leadership. So when we say leadership itself is something which every one of us, this is not a skill which only very few people possess. It is a skill which every individual has imbibed in us, and it can also be developed over a period of time by the way we handle things. So what does leadership means to us all? So leadership is a process of influencing others' behavior. Whom do we call as leaders? Someone who is able to or who has the capability to influence others' way of doing things. The leaders are also involved in the process of developing long-term goals for the organization to which they are associated with, or to the group of people whom they are connected with, and also they direct those people towards the achievement of the goals which they have formulated. So having set this as a foundation of leadership, what is the role of strategy here? So when I say a leader, the description of leader itself has in it something about goals. So goals are the long-term object or the long-term purpose what we wanted to reach. So the strategy in itself is a game plan which again has a very long-term perspective and which focuses on the bigger picture beyond what is actually visible in front of our sight. So rather we focus on the long-term goals, and then we also direct people. We plan for the future, and the plan is called as a game plan here. So that is all about strategic leadership. So leadership generally is not about telling people or directing people. It is all about asking people and making people realize that I am there for you. It's about let's do it. So leadership is not only a responsibility which a person withholds in himself. It is all about delegating the work. It is all about enhancing the competence of other people. It is not the power what we possess. It is all about motivating others to feel powerful. So the research says that information, when it is equally shared, it is power. A leader is a person who is considered to be someone who possesses more information with him. When you share your knowledge, when we share the information what we have, when we have transparency in communication, when we motivate others to make them achieve their individual goals as well as the organization's goals, that it is all about leadership. So leadership is, in one phrase, if I wanted to say what is leadership, it is all about the aspect of let's do it. So let's do it together. To be more broad, it's about let's do it together. So it is not only about I know everything, it is about we all know many things, and let us collectively work towards the achievement of the vision of the organization. So it is all about nurturing and enhancing people. So a person who has competency, who has certain capability, can only nurture and enhance others. It is more than being focusing on the self concept of self development of an individual. So what are the skills required for a person to be called as a leader? And why is it required in the context of academics, in the context of universities where we operate? So in case of corporate, we all know we have many leaders. In politics, we have leaders. We call people as leaders. Do we ever call anyone in the administrative position or even at any of the levels in an academics or the university system as leaders? We do fail to call or use this term as leaders many a times. But then leadership is much necessary in the case of universities. We will see why is it so, how much challenges are faced by the people in the universities or in the academics, and what are the various skills required for them to be called upon as a strategic leader, and what are the principles or the guidelines we have to adopt in order to develop the leadership amongst the others. So let us have these are as the agenda for today's discussion, and then we will get into our topic. So strategic leadership is called as an individual's potential to express the strategic vision for the organization. How many of us know what is the vision of our organization? Where do we work upon? So, and it is not only we knowing the vision of the organization, but how far we are able to motivate and persuade others to acquire that vision. So in corporates, we call it as strategic intent, which focuses on the vision and mission of an organization. But how far every organization, every university, every institute has a vision. So the vision, what we have formulated, has to be put into field. And when it has to be put into field, how it could be done? The actual strategic leaders must make those strategies which are in paper into action. They themselves cannot do it. They could do it only with the support of the people of that particular organization. So for example, let me take the vision of my own institution. So to provide valuable resources for industry and society through excellence in technical education and research. This is what collectively we, the teaching faculty, the non-teaching staff, are all directed towards achieving. It is not only the faculties or the staff or the employees of the organization. Our students has to be directed towards it. Our alumni has to be directed towards it. How can I do it all alone? I cannot do it individually. So I have to get that buy-in scenario from my students, from my alumni, from the external stakeholders, from the government. So to get that buy-in, what I have to do, I have to communicate my vision in a more practical, in a more pragmatic way. So understanding the first part of a strategic leader is first to understand their organization's vision, and they should get convinced by themselves that this is essential for the survival as well as the growth of the organization, and this cannot be done solely by me. It should be or it must be done only by collective response. So in order to get that collective response, how far we are going to work. So that is the most crucial aspect. We talk about rankings, we talk about a lot of positioning, we talk about competitors in the field of education. So all this can be achieved not by one person. It should be a collective goal, and possessing the strategic leadership skills will pave way for us to get that collective responsibility or the focus on collective goal achievement. So, but leadership in no means is related to the titles what we hold. It is not about the director of the institution is only called as a leader, or it is not the vice chancellor or the any of the deans are called as leaders. They also are in the position where they can exhibit their leadership skills. Even at the lowest level of the organization, there can be person who can express or who can explicitly exhibit the leadership skills and who can work towards the achievement of the strategic vision of the organization. So in no means it is connected to the titles what we possess in the organization. In no means it depends on the seniority in the hierarchy where we are placed. And it is not a personal attribute, or it is not an congenital, or it is not something which is possessed based on the birth. It is something which we can develop. It is probably heredity plays a role, but otherwise as well, lot of research substantiates that leadership skills can be developed in individuals. So, by practicing, by watching others, by the means of social learning, we all can possess the attributes which an individual must have in order to be called as a leader. So, the essential skills for leadership. So, as I have stated earlier, why is it required in the educational institutions? Strategic leadership skills. So, we have certain, there is we will come to that probably little later next to these discussion upon the general skills which is essential to be called upon as a strategic leader. So first I'll go on the generic aspect of strategic leadership, then I will direct all these abilities towards the requirement in the academic institutions. So what are the essential skills an individual should possess in order to be called upon as a strategic leader? We have to possess certain abilities. Skills by itself is known as the ability of an individual to perform or do an action. So what are the abilities we must possess as a strategic leader? The first one, a leader could able to anticipate the future. We must be in a position to understand the growing demands. What is going to come in future? We should encompass the capability of visualizing the bigger picture, but that can again not be done by us solely. By discussing with our students, by discussing with the corporate leaders, by discussing with by discussing with the other people who are related towards the educational institution, we are supposed to anticipate the future demand. So the curriculum development which we all work constantly, how do we define or frame our curriculum? Many a times it could be reactive, but most of the times we are so proactive, understanding the requirement of the corporate, understanding the requirement of the business. We do define the curriculum in such a way where our students could able to possess the required skills. There is a strategic leader. And when, for example, in my own department, we have a field called business analytics. When many of the IITs or IIMs have even defined such stream of specialization, we had it because we do have the strategic leaders who thought about the future requirement and they made it happen, and they made the students understand the necessity of it and persuaded them to specialize in that, and we have successful alumni in the field of analytics now from our institute because of the strategic leaders who we have in our department. Similarly, all of you will also have the most important attribute a strategic leader possesses is challenge the status quo. Don't be monotonous in the activity we do. Let us question the normalcy. Let us think different. It is not about thinking different as something, it's called as out of box thinking, but then we are not going to change the entire aspect of how we do the business. It is about changing the mindset of how we perceive things and what is required. So a person is called as a strategic leader when he could challenge the existing reality and he could think beyond the actual monotonous aspect of things happening in the organization. The most important aspect, when we challenge, we have multiple perspectives to choose upon the right path, and every path we choose is stumbled with lot of blockades. But which one are we going to choose? You can see from the figure there are multiple paths we have, but which path we are going to see? Which path we are going to choose, and how is that going to lead us to the reality? It is not that we have to choose a path which has less number of hurdles. It is, the decision is not based on whether doing or not doing. It is based on the trade-off between if I do this, what will happen and what will not happen, and how is it important and how is it not important. In the decision phase, there is nothing of dichotomous decisions in the field of in any reality. It is all about questioning the yes or no, explaining the yes or no. It requires lot of ideation. So a leader generally doesn't answer in an yes or no phase, or his decisions are not based on doing go or no go. It is based on why go and why no go. If I say why not, there should be an explanation for it. With the limited information available, how far the leader could make a decision, that is the most important. The other most crucial aspect, which I was telling earlier also, whatever is being chosen, we have to make the other people involved in with our job to align the thoughts, because as an individual I might only have certain capabilities to achieve a goal, but collectively only I can reach upon the goal of the organization. So in order to reach that point, I need a buy-in from my students, from my other stakeholders. The support which we get from the other people involved in our job is very crucial. So alignment of task, alignment of people is very crucial in the organization. How effectively we are going to align that. So how do we align? It is basically based on the communication. Many a times, whoever is in the leadership position or in an administrative position, the decisions taken might not reach the person who works at the end of the organizational hierarchy. There might be a lot of gaps here and there happening which affects the information which reaches. So in that case, when there is an execution of that particular decision, there will be a question, there will always be a point that I don't know what is happening. We all would have said this at some point in time in the organization. I don't know what is happening. I don't know who made this decision. So as a leader, we should, when we are in a leadership position, or when we even possess it now, we should be able to avoid this I don't know what is happening, which is being said by the people associated to our leadership. Alignment of the stakeholders' thought process and their activity is very essential to to reach the strategic vision. The most important aspect, we are in the field of constant learning. So for that sake, learning is something which is never ending, which is going to stay there throughout our lifetime. Though the formal learning for many of the individuals gets over at a very early stage of our life, probably 25, 30 or so, but we all in the field of education keep learning. That is the same with the people in the business or corporate as well. They do keep learning every day. So how the learning is not simply understanding what is there in the reality or what is being in the literature. It is all about questioning again the literature or questioning the assumptions which is being stated there. Question, find out the answer for questions, and then agree to it. So the most important aspect of learning, according to the learning organization theory perspective here, is the strategic leaders are people who doesn't just build upon the existing realities. They are the people who question the existing realities. That is something similar to who challenge the existing realities or assumption, and in turn they work on it, they find answers for it, and probably if they meet out their assumptions, if they find their assumptions to be right, then they go with that. Otherwise, they look for an alternative. So the last aspect of the most important skills which a strategic leader requires is interpretation. How are we going to connect the dots? We have a lot of information, which most of the times are half-cooked information with, or even if we have the whole data with us, how are we going to scan the right information from the existing data? So we do succeed, we do fail in the activities what we do. But end of the day, how are we interpreting that success or failure? If I'm going to position myself in the number 5 position of NARF ranking this year, and I was there in the position of probably 15 or 20 last year. I have leaped so much, which probably might not be practically feasible for an hypothetical assumption. If I do so, I should not just sit back and enjoy my victory. Rather, I have to go and connect the dots. Where has it paved way to reach this position? If it is another way around, if I fail, if I going to get back in my position, so it is not only comparing yourself with your competitor position or interpreting our stand with our benchmark stand, rather identifying our own stand with our previous parameters. So constantly we have to keep interpreting the data or the information available, and the most important aspect here in the interpret.
Ma'am, this is Jagan,
Please.
ma'am. Ma'am,
Mm,
just a small clarification, ma'am. Ma'am, is
mm.
the slide is moving, ma'am?
Yeah.
But participants are still in the first slide, ma'am. I
Oh,
think.
I have moved to fifth slide.
Okay, now it is visible. Can you please change into presentation mode, ma'am?
No, so far it was in presentation mode. Just now I have given escape to move out of presentation mode. Can you
Uh,
just say, wait, I'll, 1 second I'll do now. Now is it visible? My
yeah,
sixth
yeah.
slide?
Sixth slide is visible, ma'am, but it is in your normal view. Can you change into presentation mode, ma'am?
No, my point is so far it was in presentation view and people couldn't view
Okay,
that.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Now, now is,
Now I can able to see the fifth slide, ma'am. Fifth slide is visible. Just change
okay.
into the full screen mode, ma'am, by
I have
pressing
changed to
F5.
full screen mode.
Okay, but
It
we
is in
have
full screen. I don't know. Whenever I get access for WebEx, I have this problem.
okay,
I don't
okay,
know why
okay,
is it happening. This has happened in one of my previous sessions also.
okay,
So,
ma'am. No, no problem, ma'am.
but
Then if you can just proceed like this, ma'am, and you can just select the slides. No issues, ma'am. Now, but the fifth slide is I'm able to see, ma'am. No issues.
see, okay, probably I think the concept what I was discussing was fine. So so far it was in only the first slide.
Yeah, yeah. So far it was only in the first slide, ma'am.
I'm so sorry for that. Probably I have
No,
moved
no
so
problem, no
much.
problem.
Okay,
No,
so
no
this is what
problem, no
I.
problem.
Okay, Jaihind, probably every time I will tell that I'm just the next slide. If it doesn't happen, you can say I will
Ma'am,
go back
if
and
you're
come
okay,
again.
then if you're
You
okay,
can
shall
share.
I share the slide for you,
Please,
ma'am?
please,
Uh,
please.
just a
I'm
minute.
just stopping my. Okay, I have that moved out.
Okay. Do you able to see the fifth slide, ma'am?
Yes, I could able to.
So once you tell, I'll let me just move the slide, change the slides, ma'am. No issues for me.
Okay, thank you so much. So, so far, these are we were discussing on these four, six aspects only from the picture as well as from the concepts what we discussed. I hope you could able to correlate the requirement of essential skills in the academics, the requirements of essential skills for strategic leaders in the field of academics as well. So, Jagan, I think we can move on to the sixth slide.
Okay.
So, as I said earlier, we will look why is it required in the educational institutions. World Economic Forum, in one of its study recently in the year of 2019, if I'm not wrong, yes, it is in 2019 November, a year back, they found that average age of top 20 universities in Europe is 345 years. Just imagine the amount of years we are into the field of education, the institution specifically. Of course, I couldn't find any data for the Indian or Asian universities, but we have a very strong historical background in the field of education. The institutions are operating in with lot of changes whichever has happened in the external environment, despite of the changes, political, economic, or it can be any of the social changes whichever has happened in the history, the universities could able to bounce back, and they are the most resilient sectors in the existing sectors. With a lot of changes happening, we all could adapt to the changes, and we constantly strive towards excellence, all the educational institutions. And the educational institutions are something which is indispensable to society, starting from the school education till the college education, or even the corporate university educations, which has been very much of recent buzz. It is very indispensable to the society. The contribution what we make in the way of educating people or producing the required knowledge and educate towards the education of highly qualified people, take it any field for that sake. So the scientific and technological changes, the economical changes, the social changes, cultural adaptations, as well as the political wars whichever is happening across the globe, this field of this particular industry has survived everything in its own way, and it is striving towards its goal. So there are a lot of dynamics happening and uncertainties in the external environment. Still, the requirement of strategic leadership is not being well perceived by the people in the educational institutions. This is not my personal thought. The thing of the lack of imbibation of the strategic leadership requirement in the educational institution is again stated by the study by World Economic Forum. It has also quoted that sadly the outside society never realizes the amount of change this sector is facing and how it is more adaptable towards, or how much adaptive capacity this particular sector has in itself, which is again being kind of less valued in the perception of the external society. So we see this as a common perceptual bias by the society, even in our day-to-day life. So being in the field of education, they perceive that we don't have much challenges in the way we operate, but that is not the reality. That is what is the statistics as well as the research proves us. And in the strategic leadership, the scope for ambidextrous organization when it comes to educational institutions is very high. What I mean ambidextrous is, ambidextrous means that focusing on the current operational efficiencies and activities, at the same time looking for new opportunities for growth. So the both has to be parallelly done, which is generally considered to be a phenomenon in the business, but not in the case of educational institution. But that is not the truth. The scale and scope for being ambidextrous organization or hybrid organization, where we reconcile, we accept the inevitable organization logics, is very high in the educational institutions. But in reality, neither we take it as an important scenario, nor it is being perceived as an important scenario. And the most important requirement why there should be a strategic focus in case of educational institution is there should be a high increased focus on co-locating the universities in the area of business clusters or where the industrial operations are taking place, so that such co-locations will help to have a hand-in-hand associations or collaborations with the business operation. So wherever there is an innovation cluster, industry cluster in any of the districts, we should try to co-locate the educational institutions operations in such locations. Or in the other way, the business clusters could also try to co-locate in the area of educational institutions. If it doesn't exist, it cannot be created in a year or in few months. If it doesn't exist also, how far we are going to collaborate, how far we are going to associate with the nearby industrial clusters or the business clusters is the key for the strategic leadership's requirement in the educational institution. No more or anymore we are operating in silos. we do cooperate with the business requirements, we do cooperate with the society's requirements, but the amount of increased focus required is growing every day. So that is why it is said that the universities need effective strategies in order to co-locate its operations with the business clusters. It can be to address the technological problems. It can be also paving way to address the day-to-day problem of people. But in any means, while we associate and collaborate, the synergy of outcome is considered to be larger. So the next slide, Jehan. With this, we see what are the characteristics required for a strategic leader, or the personal attributes which is required, and the organizational ability which an individual should possess. And this is again adapted from a research which is being conducted for the faculty members. So the study says that the faculty members or the faculty role is not as simple as it is perceived to be. A faculty plays multiple roles. They have defined 6 roles which a faculty must or supposed to play. The primary role being teaching. The next comes research. It is not sequenced anyways. They did say it doesn't sequence, but they say the primary role is definitely teaching. Research, administration, leadership, consultancy, and knowledge transfer, which acts as a basis for all these 5 other roles what we play. As we all know, we have multiple hats to be worn. These are the various roles we perform in the organization, and the paper highlights that the most important aspect which has to be understood by the faculty members, it is not like when I teach I don't research, when I research I don't do the administrative task, when I do my administrative task I will not work in consultancy. It is about interrelating all the roles together. Let the teaching and research be parallel. Let probably my administration and leadership capabilities goes hand in hand. I can give at least in the field of management education, I can share my administrative roles and responsibilities, or how I handle that in my class, or how I can say that the data what I have from my own institute in some means, if it is a transparent data in many cases, could be used for certain analytics in class for them to understand. So how far I'm going to integrate the multiple roles which I'm supposed to play in the organization. So they say, like, for the multiple role integration, we need to understand 2 different perspectives of an individual. One is the organizational abilities which an individual possesses, and the other one is the personal attributes or the personal characteristics which an individual withholds in him or her. So as a strategic leader, every individual should have a long-term orientation, should be in a position to see the big picture. So when the pandemic breaks, when we had a 2 week of initial break, which was announced by the current Ministry of Education, then we never thought that we will be having a long-term online education for that sake. But then many of the institutions, even when there was a lockdown 1 or 2 has been announced, many of the institutions started subscribing or subscribing to the online portals or the platforms, and they started focusing on a long-term perspective. And they thought, like, even for the next, many of the private institutions, to best of my knowledge, have announced that the next 1 year we might not meet. So it is about thinking beyond the existing reality or predicting it. They all doesn't do this in out of blue. They did it by comparing with the Western scenarios. So the countries which has been hit by this scenario prior to us, what strategies they have adopted. So why don't we adopt that? Is there a requirement to adopt it? So seeing a big picture and understanding the current context, as well as based on the understanding of the current context, there is a requirement to develop the future scenarios. That is what our educational institutions have done it. So this is an example for a strategic orientation. the strategy into action. As I said, formulating a strategy is a paperwork, probably understanding the environment and making in paper what is my vision. That as an educational institution, I wanted my institution to excel in technical education and research. That is something which has been there hanged in all the classrooms or most of the classrooms in my lecture halls. But then how am I going to make it into reality? So I have to understand and convey that in an understandable way. It is not like every time I go to my class and say, like, see, my vision is all about having an excellent educational technical education and research, so you all have to possess all these skills. That is not the case. So in what way I could enhance the skill set of my students, in what way I could focus on exceeding the expectations in publication, or finding the new equipments, research, or with research with social implication. So the focus is all about communicating the vision or the strategies in a very understandable way. You break it down into reality perspectives and then communicate it to the people who are also striving towards the achievement of the organization's vision. The next is most important. This is something which is part of a strategic leadership criteria, align people with organization. So we have also called this something similar to this is called as a field of organizational identification, where I see that my thought process and my organization's thoughts or my organization characteristics are aligned. I will feel there is a oneness or there is a connect between me and my organization, which helps to achieve the organization goals. It is not like aligning people and organization is a simple alignment. The outcome of this is huge. The outcome of this alignment leads to extra role performance. As a faculty, my requirement might be to teach for specific hours, to do publish in specific number of papers. So done for that. Not like that. When I have that ability to move beyond, when my leader is motivating me to work beyond, that is where as a strategic leader I have. So when my superior in my organization instills that connect in me with my organization, the requirement of me performing beyond my given criteria of performance will lead to the organization's extra role performance, which together add value for the organization's success. The most important organization ability here is, it is not like whatever we decide in the a priori is going to be executed. So we should have strategic inflation points or checkpoints. We do call it a strategic evaluation at times, or interventions, or we take a pause and look, are we traveling in the right direction? When there is a requirement for change, we do adopt it. Again, goes back to the strategic orientation example what I gave. So when there is an outbreak in the society, are we responding to it? Of course, we do respond. Whether we move from the traditional examination into an online examination, or we do give a continuous assessment to evaluate the understanding of students or learning of students. I know one of my friend who's a faculty working in IITs, they gave them one of the continuous assessment parameter was they have to work on an assignment and it has to be posted in LinkedIn and it has to be made public. So what have you learned? So let us share our learning to the society. So the research what they do has to be, it's not a research as such. So in the master's level, whatever activity they are doing for that course as an assignment or as a project is displayed in an open public platform where people can read and understand how the students have worked on something which is social, which has a social relevance in it. So how far we are going to respond to the changes or the opportunities, and moreover it's going to give a lot of visibility to the organization when such kind of work is being done by the students as well. So it is going to be viewed by a couple of probably the recruiters or other alumni. So a lot of positive visibility happens for such kind of work. So it is just one example. We can think many such things. So course correction if required. Let us do it in the regular way of doing activities. And how are we going to capitalize the existing opportunities? So it is all about the strategic inflation or intervention points, what we have, what is required as in order to call ourselves as someone who has the ability to be a strategic leader. The personal characteristics as an individual, as a self, how, what should I have? And a strategic leader is someone who's said to be kind of restless. Restless, it is not on a negative term, on a positive connotation. Restlessness here is described as something who always think beyond the possibilities, forward thinking, and this is something similar to the aspect what we have seen in the essential skills, that is ability to challenge the status quo. So the creative tension or restlessness makes them think beyond the actuals. So, and the most important thing, absorptive capacity. How many of us are ready to absorb the new information and learning? So conceptually, if there is something, we do accept, but practically the way we operate, many times we all have that inhibition to change. So how far that we have the ability to absorb the new information and then learn from it, and ability to learn and interpret the bigger picture required, or to do or not to do, why to do and not to do, all the trade-offs has to be made. The next is adaptive. Am I ready to change? The require, of course, we all have this one thing which is not changed in the context of environment is change. So the enduring purpose and the continuous motivation for us to accept the change is required. And the last aspect, wisdom, sounds probably philosophical, but then the wisdom, what we say here as an individual, I should have some wisdom, means that right action at the right time. That is called as wisdom. So as an individual, as a faculty, as a probably a person with administrative capability or capacity in the organization, am I taking the right action at the right time? In order to get that, what are the other parameters required to me is I should have certain creativity. Creative ability is the most important ability I should have in this case. The other one is the analytical ability. I should be able to interpret the bigger picture, analyze the situation. I should be able to quantify with probably the existing external opportunities, and then the practical ability to execute the right actions what I have thought through. So as a combination of these activities, we say that when an individual possesses these parameters, these characteristics, then he or she is called as a strategic leader. It is not like I do think in a bigger picture, but probably I don't make it as an action at the right time, then there is a lack in the strategic leadership capability of that particular individual. So whatever skills, whatever characteristics we see, it is not as in one shot we are discussing. It is all collectively required as for an individual, and it is nothing is sequenced here. It is all interrelated, and the execution of these strategies depends upon the situation. But then when a person is said to be a holistic leader is when he or she possesses all these skills and abilities as a whole. So then only we are called as holistically a strategic leader. So moving from this, Jagan, could you move on to the 8th slide? So we'll go one by one, Jagan. So it is the next aspect we are going to see, again very specific, except for the essential skills of strategic leaders. Whatever we are discussing now has been searched with the faculty members and identified in the context of educational institutions, the requirement of skills or requirement or the existing challenges by various researchers. So the key challenges what the educational institutions face. As I said earlier, why educational institutions require strategic leadership? We do face a lot of environmental turbulences, and we also are equipping ourselves. We have equipped and we are equipping ourselves to embrace the change. So the first challenge is we have multiple stakeholders. Jahan, you can put. So multiple stakeholders are involved in the field of education. We have staff, student, government, society, the business, the local community where we operate. Everybody is in turn expecting something, or we are managing all of them together. So what skills is required for the strategic leaders operating in the educational institution in order to manage the challenge of multiple stakeholders, or the challenges created by the multiple stakeholders, is communicate with people involved in the business. As I have stated earlier, the ability to align the requirement of each people involved and then making it collective to get the response or the outcome gets a better way to overcome the challenges raised by the people. Empathize with them, understand their, make ourselves to stand in the shoes of other stakeholders and then think the requirements, stand in their position and probably explain your your stand. So it will get them more comfortable with the decisions taken. So transparency in communication and empathizing people or aligning the requirements across the different stakeholders paves a better way to overcome the challenges created by the multiple stakeholders, or the involvement of fulfillment of the expectations of multiple stakeholders. So the next is diverse issues. The organizations have, or the educational institutions is not solely associated with only teaching anymore. So we are educating people. Jagan, you can go to the next. So we are educating people. Education is the prime focus. Research, because we say research as well as education goes hand in hand. Then external engagement, how far we are going to connect with the corporates, how far we are going to connect with the local communities in addressing their problem. Our innovations, our inventions, are they related to the society in which we live in? So that is most important. Fundraising. So as many of us know, the funding is not anymore an easy task for us in the field of education. Government has its restrictions. Private players have their own restriction. So how are we going to manage the fund we raise and the capex what we are going to get? So how far the educational institutions are going to be self-sufficient in managing themselves? So foreseeing the opportunities or the challenges, anticipate the challenges, prioritize the requirements. What is the most important objective when there are diverse issues involved in the organization? Address that based on the priority. If your important aspect is research driven organization, why so? How far is research is going to support the education, what you're teaching to the students? So align those aspects. And research which should be a problem solving, you identify, we all find or invent new equipments, new products. I always say that research should have social implication. If we don't have a social implication, the question for me about that particular research is big. Socially applicable or social contribution of a study is very much important. So it is not, it can even serve a small segment of society. It can even serve a small segment of people in the society, but then it has to be related. We don't have a segment in many of the research papers or the journals what is about the social implication. We do talk about practical implication where we have certain aspects of societal implication, but there should be a strong emphasis on meeting out the needs of the society. That is the external engagement, not only at the business level, but at the societal level or the local community level. So the next challenge, Jagan, you can move on. So multiple time scales. So we operate, our goals, objectives are not short term, mid term, long term. It has everything in it. In a semester, I have to make my student understand a concept and move on to the next. As a researcher, I have to focus on certain parameters. As an institution, I have to work towards the ranking. So I have multiple activities happening at the same time, similar to the business world or corporates. So how far the efficiencies in the time scales are being taken care, and the activities are taken care. So, but that is why ambidextrous organizations, educational institutions are called as ambidextrous organization. We focus on the current activity. At the same time, we also have a bigger picture, or we also anticipate the requirement of new initiatives. So we have to be possessing the skills as a leader to motivate the people, to inspire the people, and to balance between the current happenings and the future happenings. So the next challenge, Jen. So new technologies. What are the technology is something which is ever changing. We never predicted that. So probably 3 decades back, we would have not thought of data science requirements is very important. We would have not thought of ML or AI's requirement in the education. But now it has become a significant part. So collectively, how are we going to work on it? How are we going to first equip ourselves and then share the same, transfer that knowledge to the future society, or the future society I mean here is our student community. So the last aspect here is again a key aspect. Now all of us in the educational institutions focus upon is it is not operating in multiple geographies, but then collaborating with people in multiple geographies, focusing on the locally relevant activities and then globally competitive strategies. Jahan, the last segment of this. You can move on. Yeah. So I can say one of the most important as example for something which is very close to us as an institution is our tagline, locally relevant and globally competitive. So when I was talking about the local communities or the local business operations, there is no doubt that we must also parallelly focus on the global competitiveness. We all strive towards competing with the global universities. How can it happen? Every small step what we take in our local level, in our national level, reaching towards the international collaborations or operations as an institution, we might set up our branches there. That is not the only way we make our presence globally. We do collaborate with research. We do have faculty exchange programs, student exchange programs. So how far we are going to make the visibility of the organization where we operate, and how are we going to network with the other institutions, organizations, even the corporates, and the synergy of that, like thinking it is not like 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. 1 plus 1, why don't we make it as 11? So think beyond the possibilities. So the synergy of operating or collaborating with people, that is the most important aspects we have to focus upon when it comes to multiple geographies. People across the globe are so open for collaboration, but how far we have taken the initiative? The question comes there. So these are the key challenges, and if we possess some of the key skills whichever is being stated here, or additional skills which you think is required as well, or additional activities which is required to achieve this, we can reach the position of not only a strategic leader, but our organization will also have a long-term goal orientation, or our organization is also somewhere the success is beyond the enrolled performances. So the next slide, Jen. So the next concept what we are going to look again, it is so far we have looked at the essentials for strategic leaders or leadership skills in the case of educational institutions. Here when it comes to the principles of strategic leadership, this particular research says that strategic leadership, or the guidelines for strategic leadership, is not on the individual's focus, as I said in the description of leadership, about developing the strategic leaders in the organization. So the 10 principles which is required to develop and retain strategic leaders in an organization is what we are going to discuss here. Every one of us in our organization have entry-level faculty members, or we do have students who have excellent leadership capabilities. How are we going to fine tune their skills and then make them as a leader? That is what we are going to see here. There are 10 principles suggested by a team of researchers from PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So they have researched with more than 60,000 senior executives in the year of 2015 across industries, and they found these 10 principles of strategic leadership. Though it was not found in 2015 exactly, The actual research of this dates back to 2006. In 2006, when the first research on the strategic leaders in the organization was conducted by the team of researchers from PwC, they found that there were only 7% of people who are considered to be strategic leaders, who possessed all these skills, as well as they are in the focus of developing the strategic leaders. After 10 years, of course, we expect a lot of change in the environment. We had a lot of changes, and we do expect a huge increase in the percentage of strategic leaders in the organizations. But so unfortunately, in 2015, they found that only 8% of people are considered to be strategic leaders, or the people in the leadership, in the administrative positions, possessed the leadership skills, strategic leadership skills. So this was very shocking. Like after almost a decade also, we did not have much focus on strategic leaders even in the field of in the business environment as well. So this study is again holistic, which has found a lot of skill sets or a lot of directions required for us to develop strategic leaders, because they because the point is, they say, like, as there is a lack in the strategic leaders in the field of business or in the any of the industries, we need to develop them. And how are we going to do that? That is what is being discussed here. So the primary focus here is basically divided into three broad principles, which focuses on the organization's structure and system, which talks about the innovation capabilities required, the decision-making skills, and the transparency in communication, which is vital for the organization to develop the strategic leaders. And the next focus goes on to the people policies and practices, where we focus on hiring people in a better way, evaluating their performances in such a way that we enhance their skills to be a strategic leader. And the last focus is on the self-evaluation. As an individual, whether a person possesses the ability or willingness to exhibit the leadership skills. So with this, we will move on to the 10 principles which is required, or which paves way for us to develop the strategic leaders. The first principle which we in a position to do is distribute the responsibility. That we do when somebody joins an organization or when we move above the ladder, we do share the responsibility. So make others understand, delegate the authority, automatically the obligation to address that will come in. So you're distributing the responsibility. The next, be honest and open about the information. As I stated in the beginning, sharing of information equally amongst the people or amongst the key stakeholders in the organization will actually equals the power in the organization. That will actually balances the power gap what we have in organization, and everyone will own the organization, because things are transparent. It is not like you have to share certain secret information or the questions in the question paper to someone in the organization. It is not all about that. But what are we focused on? What are we up to? The integrity and openness in communication, having an open book management. As I stated earlier, the one response from many of the mid-level or lower-level people towards their heads is always like, I don't know what is happening. We were never informed. We have to focus on try to avoid such words from or such phrases from the employees to a larger extent. The next is create multiple paths for rising and testing. Encourage ideas, and which goes hand in hand with the next point as well. Make it safe to fail. Let us have multiple ways of questioning things or having new ideas. And also, when you are failed, it is fine, nothing wrong. We always think failure is a mistake. So failing in an exam probably might be a mistake. So I'm not it probably depends on the person's ability as well. But however, failing is not a mistake. Failing is, again, we are making it as it is not an end in itself. It is going to be a stepping stone for our learning, and it is going to help us to probably equip ourselves better to reach a better position. So as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we all know about that. They are into a lot of social or corporate responsibility activities, corporate social responsibility activities. Their organization, their foundation actually celebrates Failure Fest every year. So Failure Fest is all the failed ideas or the failed projects will be discussed upon, and they will be encouraged, and everyone will be discussing on what the entire organization, the key stakeholders will be discussing upon the reason for failure and who's the initiator of that project. They will be actually rewarded as well. So how nice it is to listen. So the failure is never an it's always an acceptable means to the actual outcome what we intended to achieve. So the next aspect is provide access to other strategists. So let us have a meeting with key strategists. Strategists are people who make strategic decisions in the organization. It is again doesn't have anything to do with the hierarchy what we have. So let the like-minded people have discussions on and off. It can be formally created as a group, or the people has to be encouraged to discuss upon their ideas or share it with the other colleagues in the organization. And we always know someone who will always ask the right question. We all do have such a colleague. They might not be of our close contact in the organization, but we know them. It is not they only ask the right question to us. In general, they ask right questions. Go discuss the ideas with them, get their inputs, probably. So that will help us to have a broad perspective on how do we execute our task. The next aspect is develop opportunities for experience-based learning. Jagan, you can move to the next slide. So experience-based learning, in corporates, we do have simulated environments to practice. But here, when I have to move up in my administrative cadre or a leadership cadre, it is not only the conceptual know-how which is going to help me. As we all know, our promotions are how are we going to move up the cadre depends on the administrative capabilities we have possessed as well. So how have you handled the situations then? So the opportunities you have utilized there, or provide the opportunities by giving administrative responsibility to the members of the organization or your colleagues so that they do learn by doing. So learning by doing is what is being emphasized here as experience-based learning. How have we handled the situation, the students, or the scenario? That is more important to move up the ladder. The most important aspect in the people part is hire for transformation. Let us not have people who are S masters. Let us have people who challenge the monotony. Let us have people who think beyond the box. So how have they handled a specific aspect in their previous career, and how they have been possessed certain roles and responsibilities in their career, and how they will add value to my organization. Filling a position is not a number game. It is all about the requirements for the organization. And the next aspect of how should we develop the self is the core for us to any activity what we do. So they say like you can relate it with the figure which is given under the number 8. So bring your whole self to work. So if I have some passion, bring it to the work. I know one of my professors who says, who, if we get into his room, we could always hear the black and white movie songs of Tamil films, always, anytime, be it any serious time or any normal time, it keeps playing in his office. So we don't think like, what's happening here? But then that gives him a motivation to do the work what he was supposed to do. Probably if I like playing, probably I cannot create a badminton court in my office. Rather, I do devote some time from out of my work in the evenings to do that. So bringing my whole self is what is more interested to you. It is not like don't break your activities. Combine your activities, integrate your activities. That is what we mean by bringing your whole self to work. Find time to reflect. It is not only about getting feedback from others. We have to question our activities, our behavior. Have we done it right? Questioning the assumptions and other than assumptions, even if it is a success or failure, let us question both the success as well as the failure. Why have we succeeded and why have we failed? So, what if it is not done in this way? So, reflect upon the activities, whatever has been done as an individual. Encourage people to do this or to follow this, to maintain a diary, reflection diary. I do tell in one of my courses where it is called as the course is called as personal growth program. So that is a course which focuses on transformation. So there is nothing to do with theory there. It is individually how far you're going to transform yourself. So I say like maintain a diary. We always think before the course, during the course, after the course. Is there a change in your behavior? Is there a change in you, the way you look at things? So encourage people to do that so that they know the progress. The last aspect is recognize leadership as an ongoing practice. Learning or leadership development as an individual is an ongoing practice. The best example in any of the field is medicine. If you look at the finest doctors in the field also, if we ask what are you doing, they say like we are practicing medicine. Still they practice. Even if it is in their 80s, they do say they practice medicine. They would have been the pioneer in the field, but what does that word practice means is still they are learning. We all constantly learn in order to have a self evolution in our own understanding of the concepts or the way we understand people and the behavior. So when we have these 10 guidelines, which is not for an individual, the strategic leader actually should encourage the people or these 10 parameters, whatever we discussed here, which say emphasizes that the ways we can develop and retain leaders in the organization, strategic leaders in the organization. So we'll move on to the next thing. So next we are going to see on the 5 things which makes you to become a strategic leader again. We have developed people as leader. Now let us see what is required, the 5 things which is required for us to become a leader here. So the first aspect here is to think differently. As we were discussing from the beginning, it is all about out of think big or beyond, see the bigger picture. So this actually the 5 concepts were taken from the book called Leadership Conversations. So which talks about challenging high potential managers to become great leaders. Though it was taken it from a managerial perspective to a leadership perspective, we can individually take it at a leadership level as well, or the understanding the requirements at a leadership level. So think differently, make sure that whatever we do is not only we are doing, empower the people who are involved. The principles of strategic leadership has actually spoken on the whole about empowering the people. So empower the people involved in the organization. Look at long-term potentials. So it is not like directly we are going to achieving the strategic leap. By all the activities what we do, focus on the long-term attainment. Delegate interim tasks is delegate short-term or interim result-oriented tasks to the people so that they feel the success. Once you taste the success, you are again towards your strategic vision. So the empowerment should start at a short-term accomplishment of people, encouraging people to achieve small things which will pave way to achieve bigger things. So the next aspect beyond thinking differently is leadership mindset. What it is all about leadership mindset is creating a strategic value. Form trusted relationships. The most important aspect in an organization is trust. In the organization research, we have phenomenal number of research which says that trust is something which enhances the employment relationship and which paves way to retain people in the organization. So the scale and scope of trust in building relationship is wide. With the trusted relationship, leverage the capabilities of people involved in the organization, identify their opportunity, whatever is the skills they possess, and then work on those opportunities. Create the workforce for the future. I think it's president of Finland who says like when you have to identify the key capabilities of people, it is not like understanding about them. It is about recognizing their ability. Make them recognize their ability. That is, make them rethink. The thought process has to be redefined in such a way that they can achieve much better results. So the mindset is everything. What we think, we do. What we believe, we exhibit. So when we have making others believe in certain way, that makes us achieve our defined goals. So the next perspective is a leader should think in multiple perspectives. Jehan, the next slide. So multiple perspectives. It is not single thought process. As we have seen before, we have multiple ways to achieve the end goals. But how are we going to do that is the most important aspect. So as I said, the tagline of our institute, locally relevant and then globally competitive. Think globally and look for gaps not only at the global level, but also at the level of where you operate or the region of where you operate. So the importance of getting the people's point of view, it is not only about our point of view as a leader. When you are called as a leader itself, you are into transformational process. Managers generally or administrators in general focus on transactional parameters. We as a leader look at transformations happening in the organizations. So when there is a transformation, which means that we are looking at big opportunities. So when we are going to look for those big opportunities, we have to be open to the people's point of view. So the next parameter here, Jahan, the next aspect is inclusive conversation. When I say multiple perspective, when we say we have to listen to people, it means that let everyone share their ideas. Let us converse. Let us agree to disagree. How many of us has this view of agree to disagree? We agree or we disagree. We never agree to disagree. That is most important. Even in the smallest level of meetings, we should have this capability. It is not only our viewpoints are right, but also others have a stronger or a better viewpoint. So let us take it. Let us have a virtuous cycle. So focusing on positive things, fueling positive things, or developing others, let them make decisions, let them fail safely, and then let them learn from their failure. So fuel such kind of positive things. So when I say failure, it doesn't go on the negative side. It is a failure for them to learn and develop themselves. The last aspect of what takes us to become a leader, according to this leadership conversation book, is leaders' participation is not about forcing people to do something. It is about listening to people. Many of us will say we are a good listener. We empathize that we are a good listener, but many times we interrupt people in between. That's not the case. Be a good listener, ask questions, learn from the questions, always keep asking the questions and don't tell. If we are a true leader, it is only like we will say there is an anecdote. We say that a person can be known by his questions. So encourage questioning and don't answer those questions. It is not like make them identify their answers. Don't keep telling what they have to do. Rather, ask and then probably reflect, make them reflect upon their thoughts and guide them through the process. So, a leader's participation is always creating a more supportive environment and a participative environment where the people have their full confidence on sharing their thoughts, and then they build connections with the people in each conversation so that we can align our thought process. So the almost the last aspect of our presentation is going to be when I was talking about strategic leadership principles as well as the 5 steps which takes us to become a leader. All these things is not a self concept. The previous concepts were probably the self development skills or capabilities which we were supposed to possess. These two aspects predominantly focuses on our followers. We do have people who has to accept what we say, or who has to, it's not acceptance readily, it is probably something understanding. Check in the next slide. So how are we going to get that? We don't know, because there are different people in the organization. Every individual is different and they have their own way of thinking and understanding, and it is not necessary that every time they will be listening to us also. So how are we going to manage this situation? There are different ways of managing people, but when it comes to leadership, we have multiple perspectives of looking at our followers. The best thing, what I wanted to share, or what I perceive to be one of the best theories or viewpoints of managing people, is situational leadership style. Depending on the context, depending on the readiness of your followers, you take the style of leadership which you wanted to do. Though these are the capabilities which are essential for a leader, at times certain people cannot be doing any task without the directions. So who are such people? You have to change your style of getting work done from that people, or influencing that people in a different way. So it is all the success of a leader depends upon their followers. It depends upon the readiness of the followers or the actions of the followers. So let us see how the followers' acceptance plays a very important role. Jahan, we can move on. Yeah, we'll move to the next slide. Jahan. So there are 4 levels, or no, Jahan, the maturity level slide. So there are 4 ways, or we can categorize people into 4 combinations. The people who has low ability, or the followers who has low ability and low willingness. The only way is tell them. Though this step is not being considered as per the previous thing, here you don't have a choice, because your follower neither has the capability nor possesses the willingness. The personal attribute as well as the organizational ability is not there with that person. So you have to tell them. The next is the person who has low ability. He doesn't have the capability to do a job, but the person has a high willingness. Here the whole process is sell your idea, give them high task orientation, make them realize their potential by setting a higher targets for them. It can be a student, so I set them high targets for them, make them realize that they have the potential. So here the focus is on high task orientation and create a buy-in for them. They make them understand that they have the potential, or they can develop their potential, because leadership is all about making people realize that their potential. So give them a higher orientation of tasks and then enable their potential. The next parameter is going to be the person who has high ability, who have low willingness. These are the problematic people in the organization, because their problem is with the mindset. They have the potential, but they don't do the task for many reasons that might be. So in this case, ask their viewpoints. What do you think? Why do you think in this way? Why don't you take care of this particular work? So make them participative, make them involved in the decision making process, get their viewpoints, and then probably assign the responsibility. Here is where your distribution of responsibility plays a very crucial role. The problem children, we call these segment of people. Give the problem children the key for the solution. So it is up to them either to unlock or to keep it locked. If they think their growth is important, they will definitely unlock the problem. So the last aspect is the stars of the organization, who has high ability and high willingness, where executing all the 10 principles of our leadership is going to play a much important role, because these are the prospective strategic leaders whom we have in the organization, and developing them and retaining them in the organization is very crucial. It can sound like in an organization's perspective. Here, probably the younger faculty members, you can apply this, or even at the student level, you can execute this. So make the student unlock their potential and then do the task. At times we do. Whoever is a problematic student, make them that group leader. Make them probably a leader for a few classes. So they have to lead it. If you yourself come late, how can you lead the students? So make them understand that you are essential, because you are the representative and you have to come on time. So that is how the participation works in the case of the educational institutions as well. Jahan, the next slide. So a great leader sometimes challenges the organization, other times shows the organization how much they care about the organization, And at times, they cast a wide net to find the big opportunities available in the external environment. So leadership is not a sole concept, or it doesn't execute in a silo. It requires teamwork, it requires a lot of motivation. Then comes the success, which is the core of leadership. So, leadership is all about a collective work of making people realize whom they are, and what they are capable of doing. The next slide, Jen. So, this is the final slide of our session, which says one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, so very famous American poet. So people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Leadership is all about making others feel their capabilities, their skills, their potential. As a leader, our task is always to encourage people, empower people, and motivate them to perform the task. We have seen the requirement of our self motivation, or the abilities for us to be well equipped. At the same time, the requirements for us to make others develop their leadership potential as well. So, this is all about strategic leadership from my end. Now, the floor is open for questions and discussion. And as I said, leadership is all about something which is very subjective concept. We could able to relate it with our everyday instances, and then we can get the meaning out of it. But on the whole, collectively having all these skill sets or the characteristics will enable us to achieve the success. This is actually an interactive slide. The 23rd slide is an interactive animated picture which is taken from again the World Economic Forum. So probably you can use it. I have shared the link in that slide itself. You can later see how far the education is related with the other fields. Education and skills are required with other fields, relevant fields, and how is it being largely connected with the other parameters of the society. Jahan, can you play the video? I have a 2-minute video on strategy, on the 10 principles of strategic leadership, which was actually discussed by one of the PwC strategists who worked on those 10 principles of strategic leadership.
Most companies have leaders with the strong operational skills needed to maintain the status quo, but they are facing a critical deficit. They lack strategic leaders, people in positions of power with the know-how, experience, and confidence required to steer the organization through a transformational change.
Strategic leaders are the kinds of leaders that can show vulnerability and allow other people to be experts. Strategic leaders can also act on the big and the small picture, and they're able to understand the detail of such financial reports, but then they're also able to take it up a level and understand what the systemic issues are that they're dealing with.
Fortunately, companies can build the capacity for strategic leadership. It starts with recognizing that your organization undoubtedly already has emerging strategic leaders within it, but their skills are being overlooked or even stifled.
We've identified a number of ways that organisations can go about unlocking their strategic leadership talent. For example, making sure that you can empower people to make decisions across the entire organisation. The different ways that you raise ideas across your organisation. The normal manager to employee hierarchy.
Empower people at all levels to act with authority and think creatively, and strategic leaders to feel safely without risk of harm to their career. They also need to be connected to like-minded individuals so they can encourage and learn from one another. Help people prepare for their personal evolution. They need time to reflect honestly and productively, and should be encouraged to think about their development as an ongoing, dynamic process. You may have already adopted some of these tenets and think that's enough, but it's only when you implement all of them together as a single system that you will be able to attract, develop, and retain the strategic leaders who have eluded you so far, and gain the ability to transform that which is essential to your company's success.
Thank you. So if we have questions.
Participant, those who have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask.
Or you can also share it in the chat box.
Participants, any questions?
May I ask a question, please?
Please, sir.
Myself, Satyendra from Mumbai, Institute of Management. My Institute of Management. What I want to know, like, yes, it's very informative session. I think is very important, especially in the current competitive environment in a globalized world we are living in. So that's really highly appreciative. It's a very inclusive points you have touched base. My question is that, like, how we develop the disruptive leader actually, because strategic leaders are, the points which you have explained it, and disruptive leader is something like, really unpredictable, which is probably we can say advanced strategic leader something. So can you please give some input of you if you have done some research on the disruptive leaders? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So I have not done any research on disruptive leaders. So with my understanding, I would like to answer your question. As you said, disruptive leaders are highly unpredictable, and which is also one segment of our strategic leadership where the disruptive leaders constantly strive for something new, or they always wanted to think beyond the scope of existing, and they want to dislocate or radical redesign of what is being perceived in reality. But here in strategic leader, we do that, but then we have a very much focused end goal. Whereas a disruptive leadership, it is not the case. So, in my understanding, I think disruptive leadership is a high challenge for the people who execute it as well as for the organization in a larger perspective. But then in strategic leadership, we do have certain disruptive activities or the characteristics which is being possessed by the individual. But the way we execute is, as I said in one of the points in the principles of strategic leadership, we make it very safe to fail. So it is something where we say, like, of course, we are ready to challenge the status quo. We do new things. We do challenge the reality. And we also think beyond the existing, forward thinking beyond the existing reality. But at the same time, safe to fail means that we have taken the precautionary measures, or acceptance of failure, or that particular failure will not actually affect our actual foundation of the strategic intent achievement. That's what is my understanding about it. So probably I might not have addressed the core question of you. So because disruptive leadership, I have not looked at. I always doesn't think beyond this. Disruptive technology or disruptive innovation is something always questionable in my mindset. So I don't go into that. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? You can share it in chat box, or else you can directly unmute yourself and ask. Okay, ma'am, I think there is no more questions.
Sir,
Yes, sir, please.
sir, very good morning, sir. This is Sanmuga Sundaram from Tiruchengodu, KSR College. Sir, your lecture was very much informative. I would like to ask only one question, sir. Sir, what are all the parameters to be kept in mind while framing the strategy for our life as well as for our the institution?
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So, let me address the institute first. So, be it any organization, it is in general the strategic formulation talks about few important parameters. The first aspect is look at the environment. the internal environment, the key resources and the capabilities what your organization or what your institution possesses, and the external changes or the challenges and the opportunities what has been in existence. So having these two considerations, the environmental considerations, we look upon the strategies. What is the strategy which we are focusing is depending upon the environment in which we operate. So this environmental analysis provides you way to think better, to expand your institution, to focus on the current flow of the status of your institution, or at times to turn around the institutional operation. When I say turnaround, it means that probably shut down few courses, or what is the requirement, what is the absorption capacity of the external field, what are the people capabilities we have in the organization. So depending on that, the strategies can be formulated. So the primary aspect of strategy formulation for an institution is definitely the environmental parameters. So if I wanted to put it in a terminology which is very well known to everyone, it is SWOT, SWOT analysis. So that is one of the key or foundation which gives us the answer for making ourselves make a decision whether it's going to be expansion, stability, or we are going to merge whatever is the key strategies which we are going to take at the corporate level as well as the institutional level or at the departmental level. For example, we call in business terms as a business unit level, probably shutting down or increasing the capabilities. How are we going to differentiate the offerings what we are making to our students? So this is how we can do. So the other thing, when you ask about individuals, again, I would say it is understand your self capabilities as an individual. What are the plus and minus of us, and the plus and minus what we possess. Will it be well received in the external environment? That is, do we have opportunities to exhibit or capitalize on the opportunities available in the market, or what are the parameters we have to improve in our own self in order to grab those opportunities? So that will help us to think as an individual, what should I do and do not do? Strategy is always a trade-off, but trade-off is not what to do, it is what to do and what not to do. It is not between two do's, it is between what to do and what not to do and why I should not do that. As an individual, as well as at the strategic level, at the organizational level, we have to always make a cut-off or trade-off between the do's and do not do's and why so, how it will affect our existing capabilities.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, participants. I think we are getting late for next session. We will wind up. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Catch up
Thank you,
later.
Jay.
Thank-
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, ma'am.